Hello everybody, my name is Doug Daniel and this video is the last of the Pilot's Workshop series on the art and science of landing an airplane. Your expertise in landing more than any other flying skill differentiates you from ordinary pilots. Pilots who land well are admired, respected, and appreciated for their flying skills. This video, the slalom, will show you how to master and practice crosswind landings without a crosswind. Nowhere in a flight school syllabus will you find crosswind landings. It should be no surprise. Flight instructors cannot order up a crosswind when they need it. Consequently, botched crosswind landings continuously add to the accident statistics. You can never know just how useful mastery of crosswind landings can be. After a week of skin diving in the Sea of Cortez, my wife and I headed back to San Francisco Bay Area. The coastal areas of Southern California were socked in, so we headed north toward the desert towns of Mexicali and Calexico. Then we would fly over the Imperial Valley and Mojave Desert, bypassing the bad weather. My left main gear had gone flat the night before. I managed to get it pumped back up, but I had no way of knowing if it was soft again. This was one time that I was glad to have a crosswind. The Mexicali runway runs east-west and the wind was from the north. If we landed toward the west, we would have a right crosswind. That meant that we would put the right tire on first. If the left tire had gone flat again, its drag on the pavement would try to turn us to the left. The wind blowing from the right against my tail would try to turn us to the right, helping me offset the left turning tendency. It was not hard to decide to land toward the west. This needed to be a soft field landing even though the runway was asphalt. I had to land gently enough to keep the potentially soft left tire off the runway until the last possible moment. So we used 17 inches manifold pressure all the way to touchdown. That was less than 10% of the maximum power and gave us between 1700 and 1800 RPM when we slowed enough for the prop to quit regulating. Like any crosswind landing, we stayed centered with the ailerons and kept the airplane pointed down the runway with rudder. The landing was gentle enough. As we slowed, I kept holding the left wheel off more and more using the right aileron input. When I couldn't hold the left wheel up any longer, I was relieved to discover that the tire was, in fact, still firm. Well, the landing was a bit anticlimactic, but it was quite comforting to know that a 20-knot crosswind was no big deal, and it was ironic that we actually wanted a crosswind. Okay, here's the secret to mastering crosswind landings. I started using this technique teaching a very talented student who did everything I asked of him except keep the airplane pointed down the runway when we landed. He could brush it on with barely a squeak, or he could cross control, but not both. I knew that if he couldn't master both of these skills at the same time, he would be in serious trouble when he had to land on a real crosswind. So I had him doing skimmers so he would have much more time to practice cross-controlling while in that moments before touchdown condition known as ground effect slow flight or slow flight above the runway. Let me mention that if you have not seen the video on skimmers, you should look at it. The rest of this video assumes that you understand skimmers. Here's how to become ace at the slalom. Start with a skimmer over the runway center stripe. After finding the power setting and pitch attitude that will allow you to stay at a foot or less above the runway and not more than 3 or at most 5 knots over a stall, you're ready to start the slalom. A slight bank to either side will move us laterally rather quickly. I've done the math for you. Let's assume a 5-degree left bank. In 3 seconds, we will be moving to the left at 5 knots. In 10 seconds, Our left wingtip will be beyond the edge of a 150-foot wide runway, and we will be moving to the left at 15 knots. That is a substantial crosswind component. I think you can start to see the value of this exercise. Since you are looking out of the window 99% of the time, don't worry about the number of degrees of bank. That's not important. You will not have time, nor should you try to determine your bank by looking at your artificial horizon. Just think of it as a shallow bank. Now we are about ready to start the slalom. If you need to go to the practice area at a few thousand feet above ground level, do slow flight stalls, go around Dutch rolls, don't be too proud. I have found that 10 or even fewer minutes warming up can make a big difference. It is never a bad idea to have a discussion with the tower before you get in your airplane to do anything out of the ordinary. This is probably one of those times. There are 3 very important parameters that you must keep under control to get the maximum benefit from the slalom. Always keep your nose pointed at the far end of the runway. Never let it wander. Keep close to the ground without touching. And you should be flying no more than 3 or at most 5 knots above landing speed. Okay, we are ready to get started. Remember that the secret to success is in almost any flying maneuver is to do it slowly and smoothly. I recommend picking some distance from the edge of the runway and then moving laterally there. Control your lateral speed and position with your ailerons while diligently keeping your nose continuously pointed down the runway. Try to stop your lateral movement just as you arrive at that predetermined distance from the edge. Start slowly. Remember, you are juggling 3 parameters: runway alignment, height above the runway, and airspeed as you move laterally. Of course, you will touch the runway a few times at first. Don't berate yourself when it happens. You don't want to touch when you're moving sideways. It can be hard on the gear, but if you're moving sideways slowly enough, it's okay. Repeat until you near the departure end of the runway. Then add power and do the usual go around. You might be thinking that if you're flying, it should be safe to fly over the edge and the runway lights and so forth. Don't bet on it. Those runway lights are a lot bigger than they look. Also, you don't want to have one of those heart-to-heart talks with the control tower operators, so stay over the runway. When you first start developing your skills at the slalom, move laterally to a new position and hold it there for a moment. Gently brush the runway to make certain that you know exactly how high you are. When you only touch the runway when you want to, you keep your stall warning sounding continuously and your runway alignment is rock solid, you're ready to move to the next level. It won't take long. Okay, now you're ready to do the full slalom. You can start from the left or the right. Let's say you are starting from the right. Gently do a cross-control slide from the center to the right until your wingtip is close to the edge, but not so close as to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to assume that that is 10 feet from the edge. Slide back to the left. If there is no crosswind component, roll through wings level as you pass over the center stripe and stop your lateral movement to the left when you are about 10 feet from the left edge. Repeat in the opposite direction. This does not want to become a rhythmic movement, but an exercise in controlling lateral position and velocity. As you develop confidence and skill with the slalom, you can use more and more bank. Remember that the greater the bank, the higher the lateral acceleration. This means that you can't cross-control to the maximum capabilities for very long. Don't jerk the controls around. Smoothly increase aileron and rudder deflection. If you don't, you'll find it extremely difficult to maintain that all-important runway alignment. And that is what it is all about. Keeping aligned with the runway while you change your angle of bank, stopping the lateral movement before you touch. With the slalom under your belt, you will have a weapon in your arsenal that can keep you from contributing to those accident statistics. That's the slalom. It is a maneuver that builds that all-important confidence simply because you will know that you are truly the master of the airplane under the most challenging of circumstances. In my experience, student pilots can master skimmers in an hour or two and the slalom in another 30 minutes. Once again, I am assuming that you have your license before you try these because they probably will not be in your instructor's repertoire. Consider asking another pilot or your instructor to ride with you when you do these exercises. Have them monitor your airspeed and perhaps handle the throttle for you. Everyone who I have taught to do the slalom really enjoyed it. They really are fun. So why not enjoy yourself while you develop skills that differentiate you from the run-of-the-mill pilot? Let me know how these turn out. Thank you.